All right, all of us are back in the house here, and we need to dig through what we saw in Kansas, including what's going on Pitt Road. We'll get into that, of course, preview North Wilkesboro, and talk about the latest in the antitrust case as we also gear up for a rousing end to the month of May here on 5 to Go. And welcome everybody back into the studio, back into the show. We got all our fellas back here for another fine episode of the 5 to Go podcast. I'm so happy you're here. It's on GoPRN.com, on Apple, and on Spotify. Dan Elliott's super Dawsonville maker of speed. Dan Elliott's joining us here on episode 313. He's got his hot rod Lincoln crank there from the Speed Garage. And Dan, how are you doing, and how's Lolly doing too?
Doing good. She had a little fall, broke her arm, and she's getting better. But this is a lot to encompass. Whenever you, it's a good thing it was left arm instead of right arm. She's dominant right arm, so in that respect, it was good, but it was still bad. So we're still struggling with trying to get back some sense of normalcy, which is going to take several weeks to do.
No doubt. Well, yeah, that scared me. But when you told me about her falling and breaking her arm on the driveway there, that's a tough thing. And so that's part of you think it's over with when you're raising your own kids, but chasing grandkids around could be even more exhausting, right?
It is more dangerous. I know that.
Oh, man. Well, we're so glad you're on with us, Dan. And we wish Holly. We wish Lolly well for sure. I'm going to put a picture up later today on the 5 to Go podcast Facebook page, a picture that Dan shared with me from probably 18 plus years ago, maybe even more. But before we get to you, Devin, Dan, this picture is as you and me and Bud Hughes doing Captain Herb's show at Atlanta Motor Speedway. All of us have a little more color and a little more trim, but that has to do also with the shirt that's in the background, or one of the shirts in the background of your shot too.
Yep, it is. Bud got me on it, Lanier Tech over at Gainesville in the MVT Motor Vehicle Technology Program, and I'm really thankful for that because I got the opportunity to teach a lot of great kids. And, of course, it was my area was transmission rear end, more driveline component.
Yeah.
But it was an opportunity to be able to, even though it was a short time, it was an opportunity to give back. And I enjoyed the kids that came through the program. And I hope that a lot of those, I know a lot of them went on two teams and went on to work in the NASCAR or other series. So great program. If you hadn't checked it out, check out Lanier Tech. It's a great school.
Yeah, and that's in Gainesville, Georgia here, and so that's one of those entryways into NASCAR, Dan. So thank you for that. I mean, not that people that don't listen already know. By the way, I should introduce myself. I'm your co-host, Doug Fireball Turnbull, for the announcing team at Performance Racing Network, and AJC Gridlock Guy calling this, and I'm actually doing this show as I normally do from the studios of my full-time job at Impact Partnership, a financial marketing firm. And joining us, Dan's got his man cave garage there. Joining us from his cave at home in Cumming, Georgia, he is the roving racing journo, multimedia enthusiast, and he's getting ready to do one of his last hurrahs, if not the last hurrah, with the media team in athletics at University of North Georgia. Dressed up for it too, and a little under the weather. Devin, thanks for toughing through for us. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's been a busy month of May to begin, I guess, this crazy month because I haven't had a day off since the 1st of May, and I probably won't get a day off until this weekend. But, yeah, wrapped up my last day with athletics on Sunday, at least working from the internal aspect of it, working their home events. Now wrapping up my student newspaper career this upcoming, not weekend because it's Thursday and Friday, down there in Francis Marion for UNG softball. NCAA Southeast Super Regional. See if North Georgia will avenge their Super Regional loss from last year. They did it on Sunday. Now they got to go play Francis Marion, second best team in the nation. So we'll see what they got in store for us tomorrow.
Well, dude, that's great. I'm glad you're getting to do that. And, I know it's a tough grind there. Now, what's the deal like after this weekend? Are you done? Are you going to any more races? Like, what's the next couple of weeks looking like for you?
Well, I got this weekend. I'm off for All-Star Race Weekend. My brother's graduating high school, and we just got graduation festivities for both him and I, because I graduate in July. And then next weekend, Coca-Cola 600 weekend. So I'll be there. I should be there all weekend, pending on what happens with softball. But I'll be there to cover it from Charlotte Motor Speedway. Then I got some vacation up, and then we'll be right back in the NASCAR grind. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, that sounds great, man. Well, I'm looking forward to what you have going on, buddy, and always love hearing about that. So, we got a lot to dig into today because this All-Star race. I was just looking over the format here as you were discussing that, Devin. And it's like, gosh, okay, we got to explain that. All right, there's an All-Star fan vote. They released the top 5 drivers that were in the fan vote there, and there's only 18 drivers though that are even able to race it. We have had so many different winners and past champions and all that kind of stuff that, the main All-Star race really already has more people than the Open. But we'll get into that. But first, let's talk Kansas here. It was another big-time result for Kyle Larson here. He's really taken the season by the tail, although I don't want to be too captive of the moment. I just remember 2 months ago, there was this guy named Christopher Bell that had won 3 races in a row who is staking claim to be the top dominant driver, all right? And you saw Denny Hamlin win 2 races in a row. But Kyle Larson, as opposed to winning consecutive races, he's won 3 now, and he's really won all 3 of them in fairly dominant fashion, and he was dominant in Texas where he did not win. All right. And so he put on quite the show. And there was really only one time in this race, the Advent Health 400 at Kansas Speedway, where Kyle Larson lost control of the event. And that's when Chase Elliott, beat him 1-up, but basically on a restart there, got off pit road first too before that. And then during the stage 2 caution, things went sideways for Chase there, had a slow pit stop. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Larson really did just about everything right. And that included, and it was tough to see, I guess, on TV, and I think they were late getting to it, really, but his tires were going away big time, and second-place finisher Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney in 3rd, Chase Briscoe 4th, Alex Bowman 5th, Josh Berry 6th were starting to catch your leader, Kyle Larson, who had driven the tires off of that thing, and fortunately for him, he didn't have the same situation that Carson Hocevar had in the closing laps where the tire actually went down. So what I'd like to do, that's sort of the encapsulation of the day. The big thing, too, is you saw several people that could have taken a bite out of the Larson apple or really put the challenge to him. Chase Elliott had the faulty pit stop. Denny Hamlin had a bad clutch, or he kept losing spots on pit road. And then eventually he just tore up the transaxle because he couldn't, get it naturally into first gear and finally just broke the thing. You saw that. You saw William Byron cut a tire. Brad Keselowski got up to second place, and he had a tire go down. A lot of talk about tire pressures because they can run lower pressures in this car with these cars running right close to the ground because this is a smooth racetrack versus Texas. So all that being said, Dan, there were a lot of elements in this Kansas race, and Dan just disappeared. We'll get him back in a second. So I'll get to you, Devin. That being said, Devin, there were a lot of elements in this race that could have upset the equilibrium. But in the end, it was Kyle Larson that stayed king. So how do you blend all of that together to kind of give your feel for the day, I guess?
Well, I kind of look at it that Kyle Larson just put a whooping on the field on Sunday at Kansas Speedway because any chance I pretty much got a chance to look at the TV on Sunday, it was Kyle Larson was leading at some point, and whether it was the pit road and all that, it was just yet again another dominating race for him, and it just felt like it was the Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott show for a while there. I mean, stage 1 and 2 pretty much ended almost the same way, and really just felt like it's either them two or it's just Kyle Larson. So,
Yeah.
Big props for him. Yet again, another big win. And what seemed like, from what I gathered, because I tried to watch as much as I could on Sunday, balancing things with North Georgia and stuff.
Yeah,
But
I know. Yeah.
it just seemed like for the race, it just felt like, Kyle Larson's show, just another one of those. Like, I kind of felt like it pulled the race down a little bit. Not as exciting as other Kansas races. Now, it's hard to repeat what you had last year in the spring race. And I kind of found it funny, too, that the qualifying was the repeat of last year's finish, essentially. You had Kyle Larson, Chris Buescher on the
Buescher
front
was
row.
on top of the pole after having a not great qualifying draw, not a draw, but a qualifying metric. He was somebody that went out earlier in the session, and that's usually a disadvantage because Buescher had gotten the flat tire and had the issues at Texas. So Kyle Larson was, I think it was the last car out, and just took him right off the top of the pole there. That's a great point, Devin. It was those two guys again, and Buescher again heartbroken in Kansas. Buescher was not a big part of the conversation on Sunday. He's kind of a top 5-ish car. I think he lost some spots on pit road a couple of times there. but he was okay. There were a lot of fast forwards, though, and I mentioned some of them before. Joey Logano was another one who'd gotten as high as second place, and there was a point where it looked like Joey Logano, because he did lead one lap, it looked like Joey Logano might actually try to take control of the race. And I think that's a discussion here that continues to get louder, Devin, is the importance of people taking control of the race. Track position is so important. The lead car and the clean air just has so much of an advantage. And if you can find a way to do two tires like Michael McDowell did at Texas, or staying out, or fuel saving like we see at the super speedway races to get a shorter pit stop, they're really, if you get control of the race, Chase Elliott had it. And we saw that Kyle Larson was not gaining on him. Kyle Larson, just like when he lost the lead at Texas 2 weeks ago now, was bad in traffic. He was much better up front. And it seems like that key is if you could do something to outfox those other teams and get up front, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it really is, and to be able to do that is just goes to the testament how good your team is. I mean, you mentioned there Chase Elliott at the end of the race had it, but Kyle Larson just overall had the better car at the end of the day and better team, and so it really prevailed him to the victory on Sunday.
Yeah, better execution too. One thing, and we saw that Dan dropped off there. Hopefully, he could get connected back in. I know connectivity is tough sometimes there in the all-speed garage, but Chase did have a bad pit stop. That's really what kind of marooned him. They basically, what's happening is the Jackmen now are not waiting fully to look at both tires on the left-hand side of the car to see if they're tight. They're basically going off of feel. Now, they do have intercoms that they can talk to each other, and Steve Letarte did a great breakdown of this on the Inside the Race podcast. But they should have intercoms. I say Steve Letarte and Todd Gordon, too. Both of them winning crew chiefs, right, that have retired. So, but they basically are going off a feel, and Chase's Jackman dropped the jack just a little bit too early, and they had to stop everything, rejack the car, and tighten that left rear wheel. And when you're talking tenths of a second on pit road, and you add an extra second or two to a pit stop, you go back big time. So and here's the deal. Then Chase got back in traffic. I mean, and just never really got into the top 10 again, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. It's crazy that if you had a car good enough to be in the top 5, but it shows how close together these cars are. It may show just how the 9 team is a little bit off of what the other Hendrick cars, and I include Alex Bowman in that, are too. Let me run down the top 10 again real fast here. We had Kyle Larson winning. Christopher Bell didn't really have race-winning speed at all. In fact, he said after the race he had more Saturday speed than Sunday speed, but he had a solid run. He needed that. He's had some tumultuous time since that 3-race winning streak. He's finished second. Third went to Ryan Blaney, another solid effort there, but couldn't get it done. It was kind of similar to how it was at Texas. Chase Briscoe drove through the field to finish fourth, and he was dog meat at one point in this race, and Chase Briscoe tied his best run of the season there, I do believe. Alex Bowman ended up in the 5th spot. Josh Berry in 6th. Ryan Preece, he finished in the 7th position after getting crashed out at Texas and Talladega. Good rebound for the number 60 team, and he was the highest finishing RFK car because Chris Buescher, the barely runner-up a year ago, finished 8th. Joey Logano was 9th. And how about another top 10, Devin, for John Hunter Nemechek, JHN, in the 10th spot. Austin Cindric also showed some speed, but he had a pit road speeding penalty at one point, and he finished in the 11th spot. Corey Heim was the highest finishing 2311 car in Kansas, which is probably not good news for the other guys because Heim was 13th. Heim did help trigger a crash that did collect his teammate Bubba Wallace. They were all going for real estate 4-wide on a restart there, and Bubba got swept up into that. So he finished way back, and Tyler Reddick was only 17th on the day, just did not have speed in that Xfinity Mobile Toyota there. So I was a little disappointed at the speed of the 2311 cars, Devin, and also of last fall's winner at Kansas. Ross Chastain never made any noise on the day. He was 18th, so some disappointing runs there. Another one that was disappointing was a guy that almost won Kansas in the fall before he spun out, and that was Kyle Busch. He finished 21st, but he got spun out just by contact from others. He was just minding his own business and pinched out of line, spun around to the infield, and never could come back from it. So it goes to show, as easy as Kyle Larson makes it look, Devin, how hard it is to claw up and win these races.
Yeah, it really does. And, I mean, look, Larson's sitting now back a point, the top of the point standings, 469 points on the year. One guy I really feel bad about is Brad Keselowski.
Oh, my gosh. Let's
I
break
saw
this
him
down.
wreck in that
That's
race.
3 straight crash DNFs. 3 straight.
Yeah.
He so that's a great point because Brad at this point has just got to be hoping to finish races and then take a gamble on a win. Because here's the deal, Brad. If there are 36 full-time drivers, Brad Keselowski is 33rd out of those. We don't need. I mean, it's not just performance; it's also horrible luck, horrible results. 5 DNFs this year at 12 races. There've been a couple of races where they've just flat not had speed. I got to say though, these last 3 races where he crashed, he had speed. He looked good. And that's got to make you feel good, Devin. Do you think that makes you feel good, or do you think that makes you feel worse because you didn't capitalize?
I think it makes you feel worse because you didn't capitalize. Also, you're sandwiched in there with the bottom 4 drivers in the Cup Series.
Yeah.
0 laps led for the 6 car this season, which I think's an issue as well.
Yeah. Well, 0 laps led. And I mean, look, but going all the way to the opposite side of things, Chris Buescher, his teammate, only 2 laps led. We've mentioned that on this podcast before. Ryan Preece led 49 laps. So I think some of that, if I remember right, was during COTA, where they did some pit strategy stuff. But let's look too at the chase bubble or the playoff bubble. It's not called the chase anymore, much as we want to name it after Dawsonville's own. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is still in that spot. So Josh, hold on a second. Actually, wait, let me get that right. Yeah, Josh Berry is 17th in the classic point standings. So you flip-flop him into the top. So Ricky Stenhouse Jr. holds a 7-point advantage over Ryan Preece, who holds another 7-point advantage over Kyle Busch in 18th. And John Hunter Nemechek is actually only 24 points. John Hunter Nemechek is only 24 points out of the playoffs. How about that?
That's crazy. I just find it that for how much of a rebound that team has had it's a good thing to see that. As you see, he's only a couple points out of the playoffs, but maybe that's because there was a lot of hype about John Hunter Nemechek a couple of years ago. Didn't do so well with FRM. Then went to the Xfinity Series and nearly won a championship there, and now it's coming back to the Cup Series. Didn't have great results last year, and now almost just on the edge of the cutoff line. You got to be feeling good if you're the 42 car.
You got to, and Legacy Motor Club, especially in Texas, is showing more speed. Now it was kind of medium at best at Kansas because Eric Jones was really not part of any conversation. Then he got crashed. John Hunter Nemechek, 19th in points. If I were to tell you, just about based on what you've seen, the eyeball test this year, that John Hunter Nemechek was higher in the points than Carson Hocevar, who's 20th in points. He lost 3 spots. He had another tire go down and crash Sunday. He's not getting finishes. That's the deal with Carson Hocevar. He is not finishing these deals. Remember, he won the pole of Texas. If I told you Nemechek was ahead of Michael McDowell, wait, Michael McDowell, he's won a couple of poles. What are you talking about? Doesn't have the finishes. Doesn't have any top 10s. Michael McDowell, 0 top 10s this year. All right. That would be saying something. And of course, Ty Gibbs had a bad run now. He was climbing the standings. Now he's down to 26. Daniel Suarez, 27th. AJ Allmendinger, blown engine, and then tore apart the ECR engine department on his radio. I don't know if there's any analysis needed there. That's just hot head going off. But you got to know, people hear that. I don't know. But anyway, all those guys, I mean, AJ Allmendinger 2 races ago was up there about 16th, 17th in points or something, and now he's 25th. That also shows how close it is. If I take Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who is the chase cutoff line, all right, he's minus 211 from the lead of the whole points, all right, which actually, you think about it, that's a pretty small gap to Kyle Larson, 211 points. All right, 211 points. Now let's go all the way to Ty Dillon in 30th, minus 281. That's a 70-point spread from 15th to 30th, all right? That's that's just over 5 points per position. You've got the Coke 600 coming up in 2 weeks that has an extra stage, so an extra 10 points available in that race potentially. This could go any number of ways, and that's why you see these big swing in the point standings, even though we're only 12 races in. And that's same cars, operating in a smaller box, late cautions, all of that stuff, right? We had a quarter of our races this year have been super speedway races, right? So bake all of that into the casserole there, Devin. Does that excite you, or does that make you think, gosh, man, it's almost too close to where it's random? I mean, there's 2 ways to look at it.
I think it's exciting, and I think we have another thing coming up later in the season that will influence the point standings, I think, to a degree, because we got the in-season tournament coming up next month at Atlanta Motor Speedway. That's where it begins. And, teams are going to be we don't know the details yet about like what money's up on the line for it, but it'll be interesting to see how the drivers react to that, how big of a storyline that becomes.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good thing that we see this point swing here, because it leaves kind of more of a question mark towards the bottom of the playoff bubble right there, because it's like, well, who's going to make it in, who's not going to make it in. Now, that could change if we got more lower drivers below the cut line start winning races, and then some of the drivers are getting bumped down, then that'll change things a little bit. But I think it's going to make for a really, really interesting way to end the season, because we really, realistically only have about 3 months left of the regular season.
It's right here. I mean, yeah, about 3.5 months, I guess. We're recording this on Wednesday, May 14th, and basically the end of, around Labor Day, right? That's Darlington. So, yeah, we're right there. Hey, just another testament to how close it is. Do you need me to say any more? But look, Carson Hocevar is 20th. It's only 3 points back. Basically, the drivers 22nd, 23rd, 24th in the standings are all tied, and they're all 3 points behind Hocevar. So Dillon, Austin Dillon, Zane Smith, Todd Gilliland are all tied for 22nd in points, and then you do the tiebreakers based on the next best finish, whatever. Okay, that is crazy. That is crazy to me how close it is, and we're going to see how that unfolds there. So Dan had just had a thunderstorm and lost the internet, and he's jumping back in. Dan, we were just talking about how close the points were, and while Carson did, good Lord, wake up, Turnbull. Well, Larson did the butt whooping in Kansas there. Dan, I started to ask you, you saw some things on pit road that you had some questions about. Of course, we know about Chase's pit stop, but it wasn't just Chase. You're seeing a trend on pit road that kind of makes you go, huh?
Yeah, I think the trend being the fact that you've only got one lug nut puts pressure on not only the tire changer, but the jack man, because the jack man listens. He has to listen with both ears to hear the air guns working front and rear at the same time. So when you hear both of them working, you can pretty much count in your head, or you just know that when you hear that, you drop the car. And if the car drops before that one lug nut is tight, so different when it was 5 lug nuts, because when it was 5, you could usually have at least 3 tight, and the wheel was secure to the hub. With 1 not being tight now, the wheel is not secure to the hub, and the air wrench will not pull that tire, that wheel up next to the hub, and you really have to jack the car up and tighten that one lug nut. There's the problem, and it's just it's conditioning yourself to the fact that yes, you're trying to split these pit stops and get them done as quick as you can, but you don't have any room for error on these pit stops anymore.
Oh, right. So look, what we were talking about when you were getting reconnected there, Dan, was how close the points are from 15th to 30th was however many I just said. It was like 70 points. Yeah, it was 15th to 30th was only 70 points. All right. It's extremely close. We got 3 people tied for 22nd in points right now. And that just goes to show the margin for error, the distance between hero and zero is almost nothing. Yep. And I sometimes wonder if that lessens what it means to be a hero, or if that makes it more.
I think it means more to be a hero, because every pit stop has to be flawless, and you and I both know in the perfect world that's possible, but in the real world I don't think it's possible, because you're asking however many people in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, that their job runs flawlessly, 100%, actually 110% on all of these jobs. It has to go flawlessly, and everything has to be just exactly by the letter. And if it's not, then it shows up. And the thing about it is we only hear about the top tier teams that are running up front that have problems. A lot of times we don't hear about the other teams that are not in the top 3, 5 or so that have problems on pit road. You don't hear about those, but there are problems throughout pit road.
Well, no, for sure. And they're when you're using a farmed out pit crew, right? When you're not getting their best stuff.
Yeah, but I don't know that even if it's farmed out, you're still you are the person in charge. If you're farmed out, you're doing a right rear, you're doing a right front, you're jacking, you're going to do everything to the best of your ability because you want to show yourself capable of doing the job and being able to do this on the level that NASCAR now mandates that you have to be cutting edge and to ensure a championship.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it. You just got to be right on the razor's
Because it's
edge there.
just more money. It'd be more money to me if I did my job and that's what I wanted to do. Then I want to be the best. I'm kind of like some of the interviews with some of the drivers and so forth. Like Kyle Larson is struggling to be. He wants to be the best, no matter what you throw
Yeah.
at him. He wants to be the best.
Yeah, and no doubt he generally shows that in whatever he jumps into, whether it's a truck, a cup car, Xfinity car, a dirt car, and now an Indy car, as they've begun really ramping up the practice sessions for the Indy 500.
But then multiply that times 30 because you've got at least 30 more that want to do the same thing.
Yeah, well, no doubt, no doubt, and a lot of them are able to. That's the thing is a lot of them, you put them in the perfect situation, driver-wise, they can nail a lot of those marks. It's very little difference between 20th place driver and the top of the mountain too.
But
Hey,
going back on the pit crew deal, and I still don't know what the deal is with the lug nuts not staying secure within the
yeah,
socket. That socket is supposed to secure that lug nut, and we've
yeah.
seen this on multiple occasions. Not just dropping the jack too quick, but the fact that the lug nut comes out of the socket.
Are you guys so there's that little, and I guess that's as close to a mechanical issue, it's right on the edge, but we've also seen with Denny Hamlin at Texas and Brian Blaney a couple times this year, AJ Allmendinger at Kansas, and some more, we've seen blown engines.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the messed up clutch of Hamlin's that happened at Kansas. Dale Earnhardt Jr. went on a thing, and he was talking about drivers and cars that are way off the pace and saying one thing that makes NASCAR is those glorious imperfections. And I don't mean in officiating, but I mean just that you have that it was Justin Allgaier's job at Texas to dodge that lap car of Chris Wright that was 3 or 4 seconds off the pace. And Dodge in the Cup race, Chase Briscoe's damaged car 3 seconds off the pace. He said the glorious imperfections. That's part of what makes NASCAR. And what we've gotten to with things so highly engineered, so spec, so seamless and nearly perfect is these cars aren't breaking. They're not even getting damaged when they hit the wall very much, because of the composite bodies. And we're seeing just a few more ripples in the continuum. And I'm going to ask Dan, since he was out of the studio first, Devin, I'm going to ask him since he just joined back in. Dan, do you think that gets us back close where we need to be because it's another variable these teams have to dodge?
No, I don't think so. I think it's the human element, and whenever you get the human element, because whatever the problem was, just like Denny Hamlin's clutch, what happened to Denny Hamlin's clutch during the race? What happens to the engines? I still think it's human element that's involved in there. Something either got overlooked, something
well,
failed.
That's what I mean, though, is doesn't that make it better because we're relying more on the humans, whether it's the athletes or the mechanics, instead of everything just working?
I think it's too cut and dry because it's too hard to come back. Excuse me. It's too hard to come back from these imperfections and find yourself in victory lane. And it is one of those things where one mistake costs you the race. But I don't know what you do. I don't know if it tends to make this more exciting or less.
Did we lose? Yeah, Dan had a little technical issue there, but it can be argued whether it's more or less exciting. If it's your favorite driver whose car is breaking all the time, then that's not good, right? Devin, what do you think there? Dan gets resituated. Devin, what do you think about the issue? Just having some imperfections, just a little less likely your car is going to last. This weekend, the Coke 600, or next weekend, it's a big deal, right? Because it used to be almost nobody makes it 600 miles. Now, almost everyone makes it.
Well, I think you have to look at it both ways. Nowadays, you're like, well, should modern technology make everything last that long? And you're like, yes. And there's a proven track record that it does normally in these races, even in this modern day 600. But it kind of adds to that element of suspense and surprise in these cup races that, something could go wrong mechanically. I remember, what was it, Nashville a few years ago? And some of the other tracks that are similar to that track, there were braking issues, and that just made
Yeah.
things interesting because it was like, well, wait, we haven't had this mechanical difficulty in a long time, so that's
Yeah.
something you had to watch out for, and it made it more entertaining.
Yes. You don't want it to be random. You don't want people to get hurt, and you don't want everyone to have to deal with it, but just knowing like, hey, and it's up to the teams. I got to run right on the edge or else I'm going to step over. At Texas, it was more on the drivers. I've got to run right on the edge, and I have to decide, am I going to use the high groove in turn 3 and risk going over that bump and it just sending my car sideways? Kyle Busch and Josh Berry were among those that found out it's not worth it. Now they would argue, hey, or at least Kyle Busch argued, hey, we need to grind that bump down. If we're going to run the next jig car, it's so random, and really it would just give us another groove to be able to race. We can't race there, therefore the bump stinks. Of course, he crashed on it, so that he would think that. But just in general, this past weekend at Kansas, they had to choose to run those air pressures low or not. They had a really smooth racetrack. The way the chassis and everything's set up, the suspension is set up, they run right close to the ground, especially the rear of the car, so they could run low air pressure and risk it. And guess what? Brad Keselowski risked it, and he paid the price for it once again. Of course, he gained a lot of positions before he did that. Hey, I want to move out of this into the Truck Series race. That was on Saturday night. That was a nice Saturday surprise for me. I like that. Okay, that was fun to watch trucks on a Saturday. And it ended up being, it was Corey Hines' race to lose, but then he changed. Then he got caught on a green flag pit sequence. There was a caution, so he lost track position. And then he lined up behind his teammate, Tony Breidinger. There was a restart. He got out of line on the restart because she went to the apron before the start-finish line. He's like, oh, I'm just following the line. I'm following her. And they both got pinched, passed through penalties under green. Corey Hines still finished third. Now, there were some cautions that helped that happen, of course. He still finished third, which is incredible. But the winner of that race was Carson Hocevar, who darn well could have won Texas the week before, but he had voltage and battery issues there. And Hocevar got chased down by Lane Riggs. Lane Riggs, on the last lap, drove up under him, got him sideways. They both clipped the wall a little bit, and Hocevar managed to stay in the gas, keep the lead, and throw the finger all the way to the start-finish line and take the victory. And I just want to say, as much as I would think as a driver I would not throw the finger, and I'm not saying it's great character or any of that stuff, if anybody has there should not be a problem with Carson Hocevar showing his displeasure with Lane Riggs, whether he won the race or not, right? Can we agree on that? Or am I way out of line here?
Well, I think the fans show that, so why shouldn't the drivers show that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Now, granted, he came to the checkered flag, and that's like the picture you send to your sponsor. He's got a big old 6 foot tall middle finger out the left window. But I mean, what am I missing something here? That people that are actually complaining that Carson Hocevar is, sometimes kind of being a douche, is that a big deal? What isn't that what we want? Is somebody to do that, Devin?
Well, I think you want some personality in the sport, but at the same time, I don't think people want that, like that a-hole or anything like that.
Oh, okay. You telling me that people don't love to hate Denny Hamlin?
I mean, like, yeah, they don't like him, but like the thing about Hamlin though is he's got a lot of respect behind him for what he does, speaking out against NASCAR. I think that's where it balances it out a little bit.
But there's a lot of people that, regardless of that, I mean, they boo him all the
yeah.
time. Denny, you suck. F you, all that. The big they throw him they show him what number 11 is using two hands, the whole deal. But to me, that's engagement in the sport. Now, if you hated every driver, there has to be, a good to a bad, a black to white, a hot to cold, whatever. But I mean, Carson Hocevar, by the way, is top 5. He's one of the top 5 drivers in that fan voting to get into the All-Star race. All right, so fans are liking it. They're liking the ride, the Dente, and the fake cowboy deal with the driver's suit and the whole deal. I mean, he definitely needs to work on building respect with other drivers for sure. But to me, refine your finishes, but don't change a thing. We need somebody that I'm so sick of drivers getting out of, and you have no idea what they just said. They're just doing everything they can. Dan, you've seen this a lot. They're doing everything they can to get done with the question, and they didn't tell you a darn thing.
So,
All right. There are so many of them, and it's just jock talk. It's just like when I say, look, I love the Atlanta Braves. And most of them, when I see them get interviewed in the locker room, it's everything they can to get done with that freaking interview. All right.
yep. And if you could get to them to figure out, or for them to tell you what's on their mind, you probably would not have any conversation either, because you'd have to
No.
beep it all out.
No, well, sure. You'd have to beep it all. Yeah. But also, there is nothing in it for them in their eyes to tell you anything worth a crap
Nope.
except good people at the shop, great engines, blah, 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 the sponsor, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll usually say at the end of the day, at some point, all in all, and obviously. Now, you got to throw those words in there to make it a real athlete interview.
I
All
like
right.
it because you feel like that, okay, I'm done with you. You're dismissed. You can go.
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
Yeah.
There's just some, and they've been trying. They have purposefully have nothing good to say. That's why at Texas, when I was on pit road for PRN, well, NRN, PRN, and I got to, I asked Lane Riggs about his nose strip, because nobody talks about the breathing strips and why they wear breathing strips in the cars, and he had two little dots on the bridge of his nose. And because it's something different, and he was like happy to answer it. Lane Riggs is different. He and Carson Hocevar, talking about two guys fighting for the finish. Both of those guys have interesting things to say. They let it all hang out. Lane Riggs is a little more country boy. I think he gets away with it. All right, than Carson Hocevar does. But both of them make big mistakes behind the wheel, get into it with each other, get into it with other drivers, and have interesting things to say. So keep the personality, boys. Carson Hocevar won that race. Now, I thought Lane Riggs finished second. I'm looking up going, somehow this completely, none of the podcasts talked about this. No one mentioned it on their shows and their rundowns. I didn't hear it anywhere. But Lane Riggs was disqualified from that race. He finished 31st. He had, and I'm going to read the NASCAR rule here, bed cover material must be strong enough to prevent the cover from deflecting or sagging. It must be sealed around the perimeter of all bed panels while the vehicle is in competition. So the bed, of course, is the flat part of the back of the truck. I'm guessing they had something that was purposefully sagging a little bit to improve them aerodynamically. Front Row Motorsports did not appeal the disqualification. So Lane Riggs ended up finishing in the last position after a valiant effort there at the end of the race. So that meant William Byron, Cup drivers at the top. Carson Hocevar, William Byron finished first and second, and Byron had to come back for the back of the pack in that one. Corey Heim finished third. Those are three drivers that ran the Cup race on Sunday that had finished in the top three there in the truck race on Saturday. Gio Ruggiero rebounded from a bad Texas race to finish fourth, and Stuart Friesen ended up finishing in the fifth spot there. And there were only 5 leaders total in that whole race there. It was dominated by Hocevar and Corey Heim there. But the trucks put on another good show. And Dan, do you like looking at the bodies of those trucks, how they're so different? Because the Cup and Xfinity cars are composite. The trucks still have the steel bodies, and they put that right rear all the way out. That thing looks like a messed up doorstop.
Yeah, I think that they should resemble more what you see on the road, not so blatant on what we're seeing as far as the body changes to make these things aero. But I'm still looking for NASCAR to come in and give us another generation Xfinity and another generation truck. And I guess I'm waiting on that. So
I think you're going to keep waiting. I don't know what the deal is. I couldn't get a straight answer from anybody when I was polling them at Bristol during the rain delay about what they thought. Corey Heim told us he thought the thing that first changed is actually the lug nuts. Back to your discussion earlier, but so the pit crews could be uniform in all three series. But I don't know. That's a great question. Great question. At some point, you're going to run out of stuff. By the way, we don't want the Xfinity and the trucks to look as janky and outdated as the ARCA cars. All right. And I'm sorry, I like the ARCA series.
I will say about ARCA, though, at least they have the not new generation anymore, but at least towards the end of the Gen 6 era, they had ARCA was all Gen 6 cars. They look like the Gen 6 cars.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's super outdated.
But hold on. The Gen 6 car ended up being the Chevy Camaro and a different model of Camry. They look like the early Gen 6 cars that are now 12 years ago. ARCA looked like they had the Chevy SS nose and the Toyota Camry nose from the 2013, 2015 era. So, I mean, they Gen 6 went from 2013 to 2022. I mean, they look on the early side of that.
Yeah, they do. I mean, some of them have the Ford Mustang from later in the generation.
They're running Fusions.
Some of them are, but I think like Frankie Muniz was more like a Mustang.
Okay, yeah, I guess they had the rounded. Okay, maybe, yeah, we'll see. But that's yeah. What? Gotcha. That's a good point. I guess there were some Mustangs. There are not a whole lot of Fords in the ARCA series.
You
Usually,
definitely
what?
get a variety of different looking cars for sure.
Yeah,
Did you see
yeah.
that car a few weeks ago at Talladega that had that weird font on it and it was pushed upwards? I'll have to
No,
find it.
no, I did not see that. Okay,
They didn't
we'll have
make the
to.
race, but
Oh well, shocker,
All right, I
shocker.
got to ask Doug and Devin both. If in all of the stuff I've tried to read a lot of the stuff, and believe me, there's a lot of stuff between internet, different places you go to about what drivers are saying, whether it's true or whether it's not. You got to read into the story and figure it out for yourself most of the time. But out of any of the stories that you've heard drivers, whether they're complaining about it, talking about it, which drivers are the most relevant and the ones that you think are on point of the things that need to be changed or
Mm.
things done differently to advance the sport?
Which ones do we think are most correct when they say their opinions about it?
Yeah, that and on point. Yeah, that would
Uh,
be.
if I were NASCAR and I didn't have any bad blood and I wasn't getting sued by this person, I would go first to my veteran drivers. So I would go to Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch. I would start right there. Those guys know what's going on. And by the way, Denny Hamlin had Kyle Busch as a guest on Actions Detrimental this week, and it's worth a listen because Kyle does not give driver jock answers to some of those kind of questions. You know, what do you do to change the car and all that kind of stuff. I mean, just they now. But the thing is, and here's the deal. This is something your nephew said, Dan, about when asked about rules changes and stuff a couple of years ago. And sorry, I don't want to take Devin's time to answer too, but Chase said, "Look, we all have different opinions about this stuff. I'm not here to make the rules. I'm here to race the cars." You know, and that's the thing is you can put these drivers all in the same room and get about 10 different answers.
Yeah, but the
So
thing about it
I'm picking
is
Hamlin and Bush, but even Hamlin and Bush aren't going to agree on all of those same things.
but they influence the rules that are changed.
The drivers do, sure. Yeah.
The drivers and the owners, because you get an owner that pushes the point through two, 3 or 4 drivers that are in their stable, then they're going to push that point, that narrative, just like media does on the stuff that we see in the news.
Yeah. Yeah. Devin, have you heard any driver opinions you think this is the guy they really need to make king for a day?
um, I'm not really sure, honestly, about that. We talk about all the rules and stuff, right? And we see that, Hamlin is super involved with it and some of the changes in NASCAR. I just don't know. I think it's tough for some drivers to speak out on these issues.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of getting either a backlash from the fans or backlash from NASCAR. And
Yeah.
you have to be more of a veteran in the sport, like Hamlin. I feel like to get away. Not that if a Carson Hocevar spoke out that he wouldn't be able to get away with it, but Hamlin has some years on him that he could do this. He's been around the sport for a
Yeah.
while.
Hamlin made a conscious decision several years ago to be more outspoken about these kind of things. And I think that's really when both his fandom and his anti-fandom took off, is just by being the squeaky wheel most of the time. And he is, right? So interesting question there, Dan. I mean, Dan, before we move on from it, I don't want to spend forever on it, but do you have an idea? Is there opinions that you hear that you think, this is the guy they really need to plug into this?
I guess where I'm going to is I see so much being written about what the drivers are saying, and you don't know whether all the drivers are saying this mess or not, because a lot of these may be AI generated stories anyway. You just don't know for sure. But and I'm serious about this as far as if NASCAR is going to make the rules and do that, then I want to hear less from the drivers unless they've really got something important to say. And like I say,
Yeah.
you don't know how many of these stories are generated. So,
Well, let's walk people through that, okay? If it's any site that involves essentially sports, on three sports, or any of these like janky sites, or if it looks like a headline that doesn't seem believable or really shock value,
Do you call that clickbait?
yeah, absolutely. It's what you need to do is go. I don't like to support them by clicking on them, but if I think just in case this is true, let me see how they spun this. And usually it's person who got fired by this owner 10 years ago speaks out against this owner, and it's like, okay, like y'all be very careful with that stuff. We try here on Five to Go when it's an opinion, it's an opinion, and I try to back up something if I don't think it's a fact. I mean, we have a qualifier in front of that. We are not trying to clickbait you into listening to this show. Those things, it's a disgrace. And the thing is it's not just the AI ones. There's ones that are done by real people that know, hey, if I talk about this person fired by Joe Gibbs 10 years ago says blah, 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 like they're looking for a hook right there.
It's unfortunate how essentially just sites like Essentially Sports have been able to optimize the SEO, search engine optimization.
Yes. Yeah, when you open up your Google tab and then they have these stories at the bottom. You should click on this, right? That's
well, yeah, but even then, like I get Essentially Sports in my sports news feed, and it's just like, or really the NASCAR news feed, and they're able to optimize the SEO so well that they're able to get up to the top.
Yeah, yeah. So I wouldn't, I would put an asterisk around anything you see from those. And I know there's real people behind it. It's not just AI, but it's garbage.
And their writer for NASCAR writer for Essentially Sports is based out of India. So
perfect.
Take that as you will.
He was who helped Narain Karthikeyan win the 2010 Truck Series or 2011 Truck Series Most Popular Driver Award.
You got to know he's using AI.
All right. So, yeah, there you go. Hey, by the way, real quick on the Truck Series side, Corey Heim stoutly in front on the points. He is 64 ahead. Fellow Georgia driver Chandler Smith. Heim has 3 wins. No one else in full-time Truck Series competition has more than 1 win this year. 3 wins and 9 starts, and probably should have 3 other wins besides that. Heim is absolutely on a rail. He needs to move up. It's time, okay? It's Heim time. But I want to point out, too, Jake Garcia won his second pole in a row, and he is 7th in points, and he really struggled his first 2 years in trucks, especially last year. And David Reagan, many of you listening know who David Reagan is there, former Cup Series driver, has been helping coach Garcia a little bit. And when he won that second pole, I texted him, I was like, man, your boy's coming on a little bit. And he said they made some changes to the crew, and Jake's really locked in and studying and doing a lot better. And it shows. He is relevant in these races. But he's got to learn to keep that spot, too, and not fall back and run 7th all night. Nonetheless, Jake Garcia there, 7th in the standings. Now, coming up this weekend, we've got trucks at North Wilkesboro. We've got the Cars Pro and Late Model Stock Series running at North Wilkesboro. And, of course, the Cup Series, both the Open and the All-Star race. So let's try to dig into some of that best we can. Basically, it's Thursday and Friday for the Cars Tour, and the Pro Late Models will be on Flow Sports, but the Late Model Stocks, their bigger series, is going to be on FS1 on Friday night. That's a big deal, guys, right? That to have Dale Jr., Kevin Harvick in the booth with Eric Brennan, who's their main announcer on Flow Sports, all doing FS1. I'm going to, Devin, you going to try to make time in your Francis Marion trip there for athletics to watch any late model stocks on TV?
It depends on what's going on this weekend, really, because I'll get back late Friday night and got some festivities this weekend, so I'll try to fit everything in best I can.
You'll see. In other words, he's saying like,
but I do like that. You know what? I really do like what North Wilkesboro is doing, because I took a look at the schedule earlier, and this is how I think they should do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that they have a race before the real race at the track. And also another thing, I think this is kind of off topic, but I think they should do qualifying same day as the race, Cup Series races. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, hey, I'm all about that. By the way, on Sunday, the All-Star race is at 8 p.m., kind of going backwards here. So there's the All-Star Open is right before the All-Star race at 5 p.m., and I think it's taking 2 drivers out of that. Is it taking 2 drivers out of it and then the winner of the fan vote? But there's also the Whelen Modified Tour that's going to race at 2 p.m. on Sunday. So that's a double stack kind of deal. Then you go to Saturday. Now this is cool. There's a practice qualifying in the morning for trucks. Saturday afternoon, the trucks are at 1:30 Eastern, and they're done. All right, and then you have the All-Star Heat races at 5:10 and 6:15 on Saturday evening, and those will determine the lineup for the All-Star Open Friday. Now here you go. You've got qualifying like spread out over. Okay, you've got pit road practice, then because they're going to do a pit stop combined in with your qualifying lap for the whole deal. All right, those are going to be pit road qualifying entry and exit practice for the Open and the All-Star race in the 4 o'clock hour. There's practice for both series in the 5 o'clock hour, qualifying for both series in the 6 and 7 o'clock hours, the Open first, and then the All-Star race. And again, that's good. The pit crew challenge is mixed into that. That's kind of interesting. And Dan, forgive me for not remembering. How did the 9 team do on those pit crew challenges? How many did y'all win, or did you win any?
I don't know that we won any because it was. Now we won the Unical pit crew competition in 1990, where it was just the pit crew competition. But a lot of times you got in also into that deal at Charlotte where they did the 4 laps on the track and you came down pit road and had a stop and but it was the Unical pit crew competition and we won that one in 1990.
Okay, so the Unicat. Okay, so you won it in 1990. That's awesome. That's
Yep.
really cool. That's a big deal.
It was a big deal, and it was one of the. I went back on YouTube, and you can go to YouTube and watch that, and throughout that broadcast of all of the stops that the teams made, and this was a time where you broke the light coming in. You had to do everything by the book, and then it was timed, and lug nuts were checked after the stop, and made sure all the fuel was in, so forth. So all the stuff was done, and based on what I saw that day, it did not look like anybody thought that we were going to be in contention to win that. And it was just, you know how they say about a fast lap, if you're the driver or if you're the team standing around, the lap looks actually slow, but the car is running really, really fast. It's just, you don't get an idea of how quick the car really is because it's so smooth. The pit
Yeah,
stop was the same way. The pit stop was so smooth that it looked like it was slow,
that's
and and
I
it, and it
definitely have
kind of
followed for
felt
that
like
before.
it doing it, but it was a really good stop, and everything was perfect that was done. Just went through the sequence to make sure that everything was done to the letter, and it was just the perfect day.
I love it. I love it. That's such a cool thing. I need to go find some video from that
Yep,
1990
it's
Unical
on
challenge.
YouTube. I went on it last year and looked at it last year, and it was pretty neat to watch the teams and how close the competition really was.
I'm looking at the format for this weekend. So first off, the main feature is moved from 200 to 250 laps. All right, that's a little wrinkle, and I think the reason why is because for the Open, so there's a 100 lap qualifying race that has a competition break at lap 40. That's on Sunday evening. The heat races are the night before. Those are on FS2 on Saturday evening, and the lineup for the heat races is determined by the qualifying on Friday. That also includes a pit stop for the All Star race. Everybody that's eligible is either won an all-star race in the past that competes full-time, has won a race this year or last year, so Josh Berry, for instance, and or is a champion that competes full-time. Kyle Busch will be in it. So here are the drivers that are in the Open. I think it's easier to say that. 18 drivers in the Open. You got roughly 18 or 19 in the main event, and then here you go. The 18 in the Open are Gregson, Haley, Ty Dillon, Ware, Allmendinger, Wallace, Gilliland, Herbst, Zane Smith, Custer, Nemechek, Eric Jones, Gibbs, Priest, Fincham. So an open car is going to run in the open, Chad Fincham, and then Michael McDowell, Hosevar, and Van Gisbergen. Those are who are going to be that are trying to qualify the top 2 finishers in the 100 lap open that runs Sunday evening before the All-Star race will transfer into the main event and start in the back, and then there's a fan vote winner. All right. So that's how all of that goes. And then, of course, in the main race, the big talk is the promoter's caution that has to happen. I think it's by lap 220. It has to happen between 200 and 220. The whole race itself is 250 laps. I wonder, Dan, how Mr. Marcus Smith is going to handle that. You know, there's sort of a joke going around. Is he going to have the nuclear football around? He calls it in from wherever he's watching the race. Is he going to be up at race control? Does he text somebody at race control? I wonder how that works. That's kind of fun.
AI is going to let us know how that's going to work.
There it is. Hey,
And
by the way,
also too, would it be better if instead of calling it a heat race, would it be better to call it a qualifying race because it is so long? Because
yeah,
my idea of a heat race is a 10 lap heat race. My idea is more of a sprint race than it is,
that's correct.
but when you get into the qualifying, and I can understand a little bit of that because for people who don't know, is the car setup for a 10 lap sprint would be a little bit different from a 60 lap heat race, given the fact that you're going to get far enough into the cycle of the car that a setup for a short sprint race is not going to work for 60 laps.
Yeah, it seems a little much, but I got to say, for a weekend, that there is more racing spread over 3 days in this all-star race weekend, actually over 4 days, than you're going to get in a regular cup weekend, because you have the modifieds, you got 2 different cars tours, then you've got the cup series divided up into these smaller races, and then the main race is 250 laps. There is stuff all over this weekend. More bang for the buck on the ticket. All right, one for you, Devin, here real quick. 5 drivers earlier this week got released to be the leaders of the fan vote. One of them is going to get voted in. And, of course, the votes for second, third, fourth, whatever matter, because if the driver that wins the fan vote races in, then it's the next highest driver. So SVG is one of them. I don't think that's a surprise. Noah Gregson, Carson Hocevar, Ryan Preece, and Bubba Wallace are on that list. Anybody that you're surprised is on the list or not on the list there, Dev?
It sounds about right for the fan vote. What people want in. I mean, you said Hocevar was leading, right?
No, they're not in any kind of order. That's just the top 5.
Okay.
Hocevar is part of the top 5.
If I had to take a guess, Hocevar's probably it's either
I
gonna
don't
be
see. I would think
Hocevar or Wallace.
SVG.
I think it's either gonna be Hocevar or Wallace that gets in.
Okay, I see. I would think SVG. I feel like he's got a big following, especially what he's pulled off. I'm surprised Michael McDowell isn't part of that. Maybe in place of Ryan Preece. No against Ryan Preece, but he's a Daytona 500 winner. People like rooting for the underdog. I say I'm surprised, but in Texas, there were fans all over pit road, and I saw Michael McDowell standing next to the pit wall, just chilling, waiting to walk out of his car. No one was bothering him. So maybe I'm not surprised. I don't know. It's just, I was like, this guy won a Daytona 500. He's standing right there. But people kind of get, once you see enough drivers, I guess you kind of get over that. Going to be fun to watch. We'll definitely detail it all here on 5 to Go. Not to mention, we don't want to overshadow the truck race, and hopefully the groove will wind a little bit, and we won't have the third all-star race in a row without a lead change. Okay, I'm sure the promoter's caution will play into that somehow. So that's sort of the lineup for this weekend here. Looking at the truck series race, I'm just going to see if there's anybody worth noting in the trucks. The driver lineup for the all-star race. We're going to wrap up here in a second. Driver lineup for the all-star race. Harrison Burton is going to drive the Rick Ware number 51. So Burton stayed in the Ford camp, went to the Xfinity Series, drives for AM Racing there. And because he won Daytona last year, he qualifies for the all-star race. So the number 51 car that normally Cody Ware drives will have Harrison Burton on board for the main event. Cody Ware is going to drive the number 15 for Rick Ware in the Open. And there will not be a stacking pennies car in that race, okay? Also, too, looking at the entry list for the trucks, just seeing if there's anyone that pops up there of note or out of place. There are 35 trucks this time around. Go figure. A couple that show up here. Brent Cruz, the Toyota racing phenom, will be in the Tricon Garage number 1. Guy named Jason Alexander, who I believe is a lacrosse player in Ivy League. I think I forget which Ivy League school. But anyway, he'll be in the 02 for Young's Motorsports. A guy that I'll need to do some research on for Rayun Brothers, Alan Waller, will be in the 2 truck. Devin, by the way, big Alan Waller fan. He's got an Alan Waller t-shirt. Norm Benning, handsome Norm Benning. All 73 years of Norm Benning will be in his 6 truck. Kyle Busch will be running at North Wilkesboro in the 07. Sammy Smith will be in the number 7 for Spire Motorsports. Got a lot of interlopers here. Morgan Baird is going to make his 2nd truck series start of his career. He will be in the 22 just as he was this past weekend. Here we go. Connor Jones, who caused a lot of controversy last year with his intentional wrecking that he did at Homestead, I believe it was. Connor Jones, who was with ThorSport, now will be with Nice Motorsports, replacing Bailey Curry in the 44 truck. He'll be in this race. Luke Baldwin's going to come back and have a go at it in the 66. He had an awful race at Kansas. Did y'all hear about this?
No.
He cut a tire, or he clipped the wall, cut a tire, pitted, drove through too many pit boxes, had to serve a pass-through penalty. All right, all of this under green. And so he's just melting down. Poor guy, 18 years old. Comes back to pit road, speeds while serving the pass-through penalty. Has to come back to pit road again, cuts a tire again, hits the wall, done for the day. Terrible. That's just tough, man. But Luke Baldwin, Tommy Baldwin's son, is in the 66 truck. Freedom Racing Enterprises, that's helped out a lot by championship-winning crew chief Jeff Hammond, will have Ryan Roulette in their second 67 truck. Patrick Emmerling will have the 75 handle for Henderson Motorsports, not Parker Kligerman. And just keep going down the line here. Justin Carroll's going to return in the 90 truck. That's the last one. So they have 35 trucks with 36 positions. They had only 31 this past week at Kansas, the trucks did. So that's a little tough. But hopefully I'll get a chance to watch that here at some point in the going on Saturday afternoon. Now, we did have I don't know if I want to get too deep into it, Dan, because we have this whole kind of existential question about the antitrust case. But so I want to save that maybe for another time because we're passing an hour now. But there was a hearing last week with a judge, and I don't really know what the result of this hearing is supposed to be exactly, but basically a 3-judge panel really questioned the 2311 and Front Row Motorsports injunction that they got to be able to run with the charter privileges this year. Basically, their point was, hey, we understand that you have a problem with the charter system. Why? And you didn't want to sign the agreement because then you wouldn't be allowed to sue. That's fine. Why did you just sue and not run without the charters? How could you expect to get all the benefits of it and have your cake and eat it too? That's basically what the judges said. They didn't rule that the injunction was not happening. But Devin, this is the first time that we've seen a judge really speak out against the teams and not against NASCAR in this. And the judge has also said one last thing. They highly recommend that this not go to trial and these guys get in a room and hash it out and figure it out. And NASCAR said, hey, that's fine, but we're not willing to change the charter agreement. We made our final offer. So, Devin, having your cake and eat it too part is something that you said as soon as the injunction idea came up. What did you think about what the judges said here a few months later?
No, I agree with the judge because you think about it. I mean, they want the benefits of a charter, but they don't like the charter. So it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know, it's like, well, do you want it or you don't want it? Oh, well, we want it a certain way, but we still want to run under-operate it. It's just so much. I don't want to say nonsense, but it's kind of what it is.
Devin, I think Dan is more old school than you and me on this, huh?
I agree with that because I don't know that the question, and this would have to come from them, is whether or not they like the charter or not, but there are elements of the charter that they don't like. And there to me is the question is there are elements. But it is one of the deals where NASCAR is this is a deal where it is the only game in town. If you want to play. It's their rules. It's theirs to run because it's a private entity, so it's theirs to run. And I think it comes down to if you don't agree with it, then you need to find something else to do. And maybe that's my thought on it. My opinion on it anyway.
Well, and look, their point is, of course, is look, we can't. We this charter has been around long enough where we can't run with it. We have built around running for it, and we have drivers and sponsors with contracts that become free agents the minute we don't have a charter. They have to agree to stay, and they probably would stay because what ride opens up in the middle of the year, right, or right before the season starts. And so, I mean, I'm not trying to be Jeffrey Kessler and argue on their behalf, but that it is a fair point. Is like, look, we've got this charter system. In fact, one of the things they wanted was the charters to be made permanent. So it's not that they didn't want a charter. No, they wanted charters to be permanent so you could lock in this money. They wanted a bigger share of the money, and when NASCAR was balking at it, they said, well, fine, you're running this like a monopoly, antitrust time, and then here we go. I think this goes to trial. I do not see them now settling this out, but there's been two things that have happened against the teams. Number one, what we just shared, what the judges said. The judges didn't say the injunction was invalid. They just raised concern about the injunction to be able to race with charters despite having not signed the agreement. Number two is the teams were really plunging to get data from other sports leagues like F1 and other and ran into a lot of difficulty getting that in this kind of discovery and evidence gathering phase, because other sports like, hey, we don't want to pull the hood up on our stuff either. So I don't know where this goes. We'll follow it right here. That's all I got to say. We'll follow it right here and let you know. We want this sport to succeed, and yes, we want the teams to be more viable and want it to be more about the drivers and not so much about who brings the biggest sponsor. But I have a feeling, guys, that no matter how much money the teams get, if somebody comes up with a $20 million sponsor, they're going to win out over the guy that cut his teeth but doesn't have any money. I'm just saying. I don't care if you make $100 million profit or $20 million profit. Money doesn't talk, it swears. But we'll follow it right here. With that note being said, there any final thoughts from you, Devin? And by the way, we want to thank you again for toughing it out. I know you haven't been feeling well, but you look great. Stone Cold Fox.
Yeah, I've been trying my best here, but I'm starting to feel better. But North NASCAR All Star Race Weekend. The first time I'm not there since they started going to Wilkesboro. But a lot of people, when it comes to lodging and stuff, have to stay at hotels, maybe in Hickory, North Carolina, which is probably about an hour south of the track. But you know who else is going to be in Hickory, North Carolina? Not me, but the UNG baseball team made their first NCAA regional since 2017. So they're going to be playing Lenore-Rhine on tomorrow at sometime in the afternoon. I have the bracket pulled up, actually. They play Lenore-Rhine tomorrow, 3 Eastern, right up there in Hickory, North Carolina. I was up in Hickory for the women's soccer Southeast Regional when they played Lander at Lenore-Rhine, which, by the way, North Georgia took care of business and defeated Lenore-Rhine in that regional. So maybe it'll be a repeat of things here in baseball, pick up their first regional win since 2017. Also first time since they've made the tournament since 2017 as well. So it'll be a fun time up there this weekend, sharing it with all the NASCAR people. But I'll be down in Florence, South Carolina, hanging around Darlington Raceway and watching the UNG softball team trying to get a big upset win.
Look, judging by the pictures on your Instagram, Devin, you spent a lot of time hanging out with the UNG softball team, so I'm all about it, okay? Come on, man. There we go.
They call me Devin K.
Devin. Oh, wow. What a creative name. Devin K. I wonder what K is short for. Wow. That's no, man, we're happy for you, and we love what you're getting to do. Yep. Dan, some final thoughts there from the Dawsonville Garage.
Final thoughts is I got a jacket that I was good friends with Jim Ruggles, who was instrumental with the Buick V6 program, and he got me this jacket, and he's been gone now about 10 years and miss him a lot. And as I go through more, I'm beginning to go through a lot of my pictures, and I'm going to forward some of those to you to post so that we can, some of the Gresham photos and some of the NASCAR photos and so forth. And I'd like to get some more of that out there.
For sure. Well, I'm definitely going to post some of the stuff you've sent me of Captain Herb and Karen Emery, and of course the stuff we have from our racing remotes. So, man, I was like, gosh, see this little spot right here? That wasn't there in 2006. This was hair. Okay, right there. That was hair. That's the first thing I noticed. Hey, and I guess for me, my final thought is it's great to have all three of us back. I love getting to do this show. It's so much fun getting to hang out and talk to you all. The fans, my friend Taylor, my coworker Taylor, who's really good friends with Momo and me, her dad just got a wild hair and said, I want to go to a NASCAR race. All right. And of course, I immediately told her, well, bone up on 5 to go. Here you go. Listen to this. And they have been a little bit. But she is not a sports person at all. All right. She's like anime and things like that. All right. Cats. She and Momo, cats. All right. But she is so pumped about getting to go to the race with her dad and finding something to bond with her aunts. And I, this happened all the same week. The NASCAR Full Speed came out. We didn't talk about it this week. We'll hit it next week, maybe. She is really gotten energetic about racing and has listened here to 5 to go a little bit. And, has even asked me questions about you guys. So I just think that's cool. And it's something to remember is, as much as we talk about the stats and stuff, racing and like many other sports is something you can bond over. And there's a lot of negativity that comes out of this stuff. And it's like, gosh, can we just go and enjoy the dang race instead of waiting for the next controversy to get our pitchforks here? Enjoy the race. So what, he shot a bird or cussed the engine department, whatever. We're enjoying the race. All right. So what, they can't pass. We're enjoying the race. And yes, those things get to get fixed, but enjoy the race. It's bringing family together.
So what if your favorite driver's car blew up?
Even if your favorite driver's car blew up. By the way, I think she's become a Blaney and Suarez fan, especially after watching NASCAR Full Speed. So there you go. We'll keep you updated on Taylor's exploits of racing. She'll be at the Quaker State 400 coming up from Atlanta Motor Speedway. By the way, check out, there's a bonus episode that's audio only. I haven't mentioned it this whole time, and I didn't even get to play. I had some audio ready. We'll cue it up for next week. But Eric Jones and I got to spend 6-8 minutes together just going over his 300 start, what he thinks about Atlanta, and how he was the first person to really go 3 wide at the new Atlanta and make up some spots. He's going to talk about that and the importance of his foundation. That's all in the bonus 5 to Go episode that came out late last week. Check it on Apple, Spotify, the 2 places you can find that. This full episode, always available, Apple, Spotify, and GoPRN.com. And for those watching, we thank you on YouTube. Our full episode numbers have gone down just a little bit on YouTube, but the YouTube shorts are doing really well. I'm not talking about our undergarments. I'm talking about the shorter videos, okay? So be sure to check those out. Those are all on the feed on my YouTube page. Just search Doug Turnbull on YouTube. Thank you, Devin. Thank you, Dan. Thank you all for listening. I'm Doug, and we'll have another episode coming very shortly your way here of the 5 to Go podcast. God bless and take care.